Welcome to episode 3 of Objectively Biased. And no, I did not say the wrong show title this week. This is Wilder Adams alongside John Tortorelli and River Brown. And today we are covering some spotlights of the week. So, some of the best players, some of the biggest storylines we have seen around the NBA lately. We're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks and their horrid start. We're going to talk about some Paolo Banchero as well as some more. So, what's going on, guys? How are you doing?
Doing great, man.
That's all you got, John? You're doing
Oh
great.
no, I'm just waiting for you to speak first, but just wanted to
He
get it
just
out and
woke
go
up, by
along.
the way. So, I'm not
Did
sure
yeah.
his brain's there yet.
I feel good. I'm excited to talk some basketball. I feel like I haven't really talked legit ball in a while, although, the season has just started. So, nothing really to talk about. But I feel like there's been a couple fun overreactions that I've seen on Twitter, some exciting things. I feel like we got some good hoops going on. I'm excited to talk some ball. Some crushing news that we're going to talk about today. I hate that it happened. But, yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, the Paolo news really stinks. Him
Brutal.
being out for a month, and we saw with the Cleveland game how important he is. So, yeah, that was definitely devastating. And, the funniest thing is on Twitter or X, whatever they call it these days, there's always like a big gap of people overreacting, or regardless of what happens, it's just 4 games, it's just 5 games. So that's funny. And obviously, we're going into a very important week in American history right now because we're finally going to know who owns the Minnesota Timberwolves this week. So that's going to be a big thing that I think the entire country is waiting for. So yeah, we got a lot going on, and let's just go straight into the show now and just talk about some of those player spotlights. And you know what, John, I'm going to start with you. Who's a person you're going to give your spotlight of the week to?
My spotlight of the week is going to go to a big man that I think over the last 5 years has quickly become one of the more underrated players. But right now, with Kawhi Leonard at the lineup, it's been Ivica Zubac working with James Harden, having a career season, averaging 19 points a game. And so far, he's leading the NBA as well in rebounds. He's long been one of the NBA's better rebounders, but this year he's really been having his best season altogether in pick and roll. He's continuing to be a better passer as well. And he's averaging 3 assists, which is a career high down the board. And I just think when we're looking at what the Clippers have been, it's been James Harden centric with some of their injuries. Currently, they're 2-3, but I would have to say Ivica Zubac being the backbone of one of the NBA's better defenses, having a career year down the board at age 27, that to me be my spotlight of the week because right now he is playing some really good basketball.
Stole my guy. You stole my guy for sure. Listen, Zubac has
Yeah,
been amazing. I know you saw our episode, John. I tried to tell these guys about Zubac, man. They just didn't. They didn't want to listen to me. My spotlight of the week though is not a player because you stole it. I'm gonna. I had 3 options. I'm gonna roll with a team here. I'm gonna give a team a spotlight, and I think that spotlight is gonna go to the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is the first time they've started 5-0 since 2016, if I remember the stat correctly. It's been a long time. It might have been 2017, but nonetheless, it's been a really long time since they started 5-0. Dismantling the Lakers, beating down Orlando with no Banchero. I mean, they've just beaten the Knicks in the Garden. They've just kind of been on this different level of attitude, different level of tear. And it starts from everybody. I mean, their starters, I don't even think any of their starters are playing over 30 minutes a game. Like, that's how much they're kind of implementing their game plan. They're kind of putting their foot on necks. They're just kind of ending games pretty early, if not ending games pretty early, making sure it's a comfortable lead, and then they're going out there and they're sitting their guys. I mean, Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, the big four has been in sync more than I've seen them in sync in the last 3 years. Evan Mobley looks more aggressive on offense. He looks like he's definitely worked on his game in the post-up range, having the handles being able to work in his favor. Darius Garland looks a lot stronger. He looks a little bit more aggressive. He looks better on the defensive end. Donovan Mitchell doing Donovan Mitchell things early on in the game. I mean, this team, for me, is the easy spotlight of the week just because of the simple fact that they look much different. They look more mature. They look, the attitude is there. I can't forget about guys like Karis LeVert, who's shooting a scorching hot percentage from the 3-point line. You got guys like Dean Wade, who's giving you that role player-esque contributions, and they don't even have Max Strus yet, who I think is a good, important piece to their offense and defense, honestly. And they're just rolling out guys like Ty Jerome, who gives them a solid boost some nights. Sam Murrell, who gives them a solid boost some night. George Niang, Isaac Okoro. Like, this is essentially the same team that they've had for the past 2 or 3 years. And you can just tell with a new coaching staff and the way Garland and Mobley have approached games, they look more aggressive. They feel like a different, mature team. So for me, this is my spotlight of the week.
Great shot.
I love that point that you said regarding the maturity of this team, because that's always been the problem with this Cleveland Cavaliers team. Outside of Mitchell, this team always looked unbalanced. It looked young. It looked shallow. It just didn't look like a complete team, which is pretty crazy because this is a team that is a 4 or 5 seed with these guys, right? So it's not like they've been bad in the process, but there's always felt like there was a lot more meat on the bone for Cleveland, especially with Evan Mobley's development. Darius Garland with his jaw injury a year ago. And there's always been questions. Can you have 2 non-floor spacing bigs and 2 tiny guards be your 4 core pieces? That feels really unbalanced in a lot of ways. But so far this year, Garland is motivated. Mobley is motivated. The new coaching change has made a very big difference. Atkinson, just the offense looks way more fluid overall, and Mobley is being tapped into in a wide array of ways in which he wasn't last year until really the Boston series. But that was a lot of, he's a center and Jared Allen's not playing. So is it a positional thing? But it's really encouraging, especially seeing these signs from Mobley, who's up to about 18 points a game, which is a modest growth for him. But I think we're seeing a lot of those signs that he can play with Mobley and Allen. And there's some questions that are going to come with the size imbalance of this roster, especially when some of the guys that you mentioned aren't shooting well. But I think those are questions that we'll look down the road, and more so the questions between, is this team really good or great? And I think that's a good spot to be in right now.
Absolutely. And we look at last year to this year, it seems like their offense was kind of the thing that maybe held them back, with it being so reliant on Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, Darius Garland last year wasn't quite the same player. Where they're 18th in offensive rating last year, right now they're averaging 123 points per 100 possessions, second in offensive rating in the NBA. They've had 130 points in 4 of their 6 games. And then, of course, we know the defense is going to be the same exact foundation. They've missed a couple of guys like Strus, but I just think generally the next step for this team is finding more ways to attack teams, and we're seeing a little bit of that with Mobley. We're seeing him take a little bit more threes. I still want to see him take more. Darius Garland's been more efficient. 43% from 3, something I think he can sustain for an entire season with the type of role, the type of looks, and also just like the confidence that he's starting to slowly rebuild after a forgettable season last year. And I think lastly, for that bench, you have Karis LeVert, who's more of that do-it-all creator, that jumbo wing, but having 3 to 4 solid shooters in there is something that you can constantly plug and play that 5th starter, depending on who's playing well in that matchup. Last year at times, it may have been Georges Niang. Obviously, it could have been Strus. It could be Sam Merrill. So I just think for them, they can toggle between a lot of different guys. And most importantly, like Riff highlights, their best start since the 2017 season with Kenny Atkinson coming in. I think they have the right type of culture to establish and maintain this type of start to the season. Last year, won 48 games. I think they're going to be a regular season juggernaut this year, and they can win upwards to 55. If guys,
it's been a team thing. Like against New York, you need a Garland step up. He did. He was the best player for them that night. Against the Lakers, you needed Donovan Mitchell to get it going early. He did that. Against Orlando, you needed all 4 guys to come in and set the tone. They've done that. So they've made it a big emphasis to start games strong. Start games with a bit of an aggressive tone, and they've done that throughout the season. And you mentioned it, Wilder. It's going to be obviously questions are going to come when this team eventually gets a loss on the board and when they go through a slump, throughout the year. But I think with the way they've approached this year, it's a different level of maturity that's kind of haunted this team. The media's haunted this team. I think they'll be able to attack that level a little bit differently than how they've done it before, because I think they're a little bit ahead of the game. They have Kenny Atkinson, a different coaching staff in there, and that's really going to help them out this year.
Absolutely.
I think that is definitely a moral boost. Just sometimes a team needs a brand new head coach, and then things just get better. It happens once in a while, right? And I think Cleveland's an example. And I think an encouraging sign for Cleveland. It's a small under the radar thing, but we're talking about, did they have like the glue to kind of put these like 2 small guards and 2 bigs together and make it work? One of those big names who should be a piece that kind of glues them together as a role player is Isaac Okoro, and he's had a horrible start to the year. I mean, he's shooting like 35% from the field, below 4 points a game. So if he's starting, he's never going to be a great offensive player, but if he has a pulse on offense while maintaining that defensive energy, that's just another piece that can add to their ceiling in the regular season. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that Cleveland's going to maintain this.
Absolutely.
And so I was thinking about my spotlight of the week. I'm frankly kind of surprised. I was kind of going off of who's going to save my guy which one of the two, and I'll just go do the other guy, and neither of you mentioned him. So
I know
I
it
just want
is.
to give a quick shout out to Cam Thomas real quick because he's giving you 28 a game in Brooklyn. They don't look like absolute garbage, which we expected, but it's early in the season. That's probably going to fall to the mean eventually, but Cam Thomas, he's going to be very productive. The guy I want to shout out is my guy. I've been holding onto this agenda for years. My Twitter history backs it up with some receipts. It's going to be Trey Mann of the Charlotte Hornets. He has been fantastic, and he's a guy I had 8th in my draft board in 2021. I said he was the most effortless looking creator in quite some time in that draft. Just everything looked so easy. I had no idea how he couldn't work in the NBA. It doesn't work in OKC, goes to Charlotte, and now you're seeing that confidence really kick in, that creativity, that space creation, the effortless shooting motion, the ability to get to the rim. He just, to me, like a fully realized Trey Mann, at the minimum, can be one of the best 6 men in the NBA. And I do believe there's some star potential just sitting in the background on this one, in the archives. And as long as he maintains this confidence and he keeps getting these type of minutes, even when Brandon Miller comes back, I think Trey Mann is going to be the 3rd leading scorer on Charlotte. And I think he's going to be an MIP finalist because I think you don't get creators like this very often who are this gifted, and he's finally getting the confidence and opportunity to display that.
I love that shout. He's been honestly one of the most fun players to watch this year. First off, the aesthetic of watching him play with the old school baggy hoops is something that sticks out because you never really see that anymore today. But I want to say for a guy that in Oklahoma City was buried down their depth chart from the time he was a rookie. Anytime he got the opportunity, year one, 35 points, 30 points consistently. His ability to kind of manipulate guys in space and toggle between that intermediate game, get his mid-range shots and his floaters. It to me is kind of reminiscent of your hyper confident scoring guard, but then the shot making that he has, 44% from the three is impressive. He's able to get to the rim. He has decent size to that guard spot. And to come off the bench playing under 30 minutes a game and you're dropping 21 behind LaMelo Ball says a lot. And this Charlotte offense has a lot of different options. Right now, they're 5th in offensive rating and it is early in the season. But I think Trey Mann running that second unit and being that instant offense where he's hyper efficient from 2 49%. Actually, 49%, 56 effective field goal percentage. The only thing for me is maybe at his size, can he finish through contact? Can he get to the rim and then get to the foul line more? That's the only thing to me that can really hold him back from being a complete scorer. But I think every other part of his game, from being able to get to his spots and make shots, I mean, it's super impressive. And I think you're right to have him top 10 that 2021 class because he's one of the most natural scorers in the NBA.
We are watching our generation's J.R. Smith, Lou Williams. This is the
Jamal
vibe.
Crawford.
Jamal Crawford. Like, this is the vibe we're getting. The swag, the aura, the baggy clothes, the ball handling, the aesthetically pleasing bucket getter. I mean, I think OKC is going to have a lot of these where they have guys buried at the end of the roster and then they get sent out and they look really good. People, Aaron, they're going to try to keep him getting in that rotation as much as they can possible. I think with Trey Mann, people loved his game, and it's interesting because people have been like, well, you're not the only one. People have been begging for him to get his role, get his spot, and now he's here in Charlotte. I love to see him hoop out. He's balling. And he's perfect for the kind of the offense they like to run. He's built for that type of swag, and I love that he's running the second unit. 30 minutes off the bench seems calm for him because he probably should be a starter. And I'm excited to see the offensive output that they can put out when they fully have LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and Trey Mann for an extended amount of time.
The insane aura in that starting lineup, the shot creation, the flashiness between LaMelo and Trey Mann. Is there not a more flashy, just on-ball combo in the NBA right now than LaMelo Ball and Trey Mann? It's so appealing.
There's not really many. I think the other part too, Trey, is he's an awesome athlete at that size, 6'3". He's able to contest guys, and I think him being able to kind of I said before, he can get to the foul line more. He is like 180 pounds. But him being able to get downhill to the rim and then finishing different angles too, I think that's another thing that's really stood out to me. Because at that size, he doesn't look like an amazing athlete, especially with, I think, the baggy pants. It gives me the notion that this guy's not going to go up and take flight and then make a crafty finish. But he'll do it consistently. I think that's another really cool
The baggy pants kill me. They're so big. It's mad funny.
It really is 2006, the scrims.
It's a cool style. I think
Yeah.
if Charlotte buys into that entire vibe this year, I think they'll be one of the more likable teams because I don't think this team sucks. I really don't.
No,
I'm not saying this is a playoff team, but
I think so.
if you want to see just a competitive 125-point game,
John,
I think Charlotte
what do you mean?
Huh?
Don't we? I heard you. What do you
I think
mean?
they're a playoff team.
Oh,
Absolutely.
You think
Oh.
Charlotte's a playoff team?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
let's think about this. Who are the teams? So
Do you mean like playoff, like top 6, or you mean by way of play in?
Like by way of playing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I could see that. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm with you.
7 seed,
Oh.
44 of 45 wins. Yep.
I think they're a play-in team too.
Let me see. You got I know you got Cleveland, you got
Boston,
you
New
got
York.
Philly, New York.
Heat 4, Sixers 5. The Bucks, we'll talk about them at 6. They're not looking good. At
Orlando?
least make it. Orlando will be 7.
Indiana?
Indiana?
8. So they'd have to take that playoff spot from one of.
You think they have to be both?
They'd have to take it from one of the Bucks or Miami, maybe Orlando. So they're gonna have to take it from a good playoff team too.
Okay, here we go.
So
Chicago is also like a magnetic pull to like 9 seed, 8 seed as well. They're just really annoying.
They're destined for the 9 seed. Yeah.
We all think that they need to rebuild, but they always hold on, and they're like annoyingly average once again. So that's a team that I feel like is in a similar tier as Charlotte, but Charlotte has way more aura, so I don't care. I'm still watching Charlotte way more than Chicago. Sorry,
I don't think Chicago was ever going to be bad enough to be worse than like the Wizards, Brooklyn, probably Detroit. The scary part is going to be, like you mentioned, if they're too good enough to where they're sitting in a play-in spot and they maybe win it. Now you're sitting at a 9th seed and you're like, damn it, we're probably going to get like a double-digit lottery pick. We don't want that. We want like a top 6 pick.
Right. The Bulls really are the Las Vegas Raiders in the NBA because they're a team that has a good amount of talent, specifically in their backcourt. Zach LaVine healthy and Kobe White. Josh Giddey, it's that weird time of the year where Giddey and Vucevic are also going to play well too. So with no expectations and your backcourt of Kobe and Zach LaVine, having a good defense with that makes you like automatically a 35 to 40 win team. And that's too high of a floor for you to get yourself a top 5 draft pick. The same way the Las Vegas Raiders for years have had some talent on that team, but they've never been able to get themselves that young franchise quarterback or that opportunity to because all of these other teams are just losing more games and bottoming out. So I think for Chicago, they're in just, even if they do try to trade a guy like, say, I don't know, Zach LaVine, they might still be too competitive to get themselves that golden lottery ticket. So I think it is a blessing and a curse to have yourself this kind of sneaky competitive group right now because you want to be really bad in a draft class like this.
It is not a blessing at all. If I'm a Chicago Bulls fan right now, and it's like the 9th straight year of this crap, they went from just the perennial 7th overall pick team to like the perennial 11th overall pick team. That is literally basketball hell. And I hate Chicago to the core, man, because they're just like we know they're not good. We know who they are, but they find a way to just shoot 50% from 3 against the Timberwolves every time we play them. For that, it's like every time they play, they look like gods against us, and they're going to beat us on whatever we play them next week. Timberwolves do. They're going to beat us next week because that's just what Chicago does. So I'm hoping they rebuild so we can get those 2 wins that we never get against Chicago.
That's fine.
But I think this is a good way to. Oh yeah, last thing, Liam McNeely, you are a Chicago Bull. Next topic. So. We alluded to it a minute ago, but Milwaukee 1-4 start, not looking good. There's a lot of Giannis trade rumors again. What's your opinion on Milwaukee right now?
Listen, I think the conversation about Milwaukee has kind of been weird. I was never too big on the offseason moves they made. Like, I thought they were okay.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you did the best you could with the money you had. But in reality, you didn't do enough to make a championship team. Let's just call it how you didn't do enough. Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, there was always going to be issues in that frontline defense. You weren't going to be able to have guys that can stop the ball. It just was no chance. These guys don't have that ability. Then you bring in Darvin Ham to pair up with Doc Rivers. That gotta be the craziest shit I've ever heard in my life. It's insane to me how you can bring in these players, bring in this type of coaching staff, And now you're sitting here confused at why you're 1-4. And I mean, these aren't regular losses. Like, I wouldn't be upset if you lost to Boston twice and like you lost to like OKC. All right, cool. Whatever. You like I'm not mad in New York for getting their ass whipped against Boston on opening night. It's Boston. I'm not gonna sit here and get upset about that. But you lost to the Nets.
And
You lost to Chicago.
by double digits.
Yeah, you're not losing. Like, this isn't clutch time. Like, you're losing, and then you lost to Memphis when they're missing half their players. Like, so you're losing bad, and you're not even like in these games. Like, these aren't close games. You're getting kind of pummeled early. And this team was getting projected off the strength of Giannis being an elite top 3 player in the world and Dame having a possible bounce back year. Dame is struggling early. Giannis is still great, but there's only so much he can do. This team is old. It lacks athleticism. It lacks any juice up front. It lacks any defensive anything up front. The back line is cool. But when Giannis gets off the court, the defense falls even worse than what it is when he's on the court. Brook Lopez is old. He can't really do much. They really don't have any defensive capabilities outside of protecting the rim, and they don't really have that when Giannis is out the game. So this is a team that honestly may push for a playoff spot. You still got to trust in Giannis to get that job done. You still trust in Dame to still get some wins in there. But in terms of just what their ceiling is championship. When you have Giannis on your team, you want to make the Eastern Conference Finals. You want to win a championship, make the finals. They cannot do that. And this is tough for them because Giannis has stated a couple years ago that his goal is to win. If they cannot build a winning team around him, he will gladly leave. He kind of reiterated that this summer, and all signs point to him going to Golden State. I've seen the news. I've seen the stuff that's going on. He wants to play with Steph. Bring him here. But nonetheless, I think Giannis, we can possibly be looking at Giannis's last year or two here in Milwaukee. And, honestly, I want to see Giannis win. So, well, not win. I want to see him in a competitive situation. So, like, Milwaukee, you haven't hit on none of your draft picks. Let's not forget about that. You've missed on damn near every draft pick you've had. You're not bringing in quality role players. You're relying on guys who are either too injury prone, Chris Middleton, or too old, Brook Lopez. This is just a broken down roster with a head coach that kind of can't fix or mend or even put a Band-Aid on this problem.
I look at this team right now in Milwaukee, and for starters, there's 2 rotation players below the age of 30. Those are Gary Harris and Bobby Portis. The rest of this group, all players in the back half.
And Bobby's 29.
Exactly.
It's a retirement facility.
You look at their entire team down the board, a lot of these guys are offensively minded players. Right now, the Bucks are 28th in 3-point shooting at 30%. You've got Dame struggling a little bit. The offense isn't really gaining a lot of flow or movement. Some of it is them settling early in shot clocks and possessions, not getting a whole lot of looks to where they are really just relying on Giannis. And you highlight it, they're getting run off the floor by a Memphis team missing half their rotation. Half the rotation is out this game. And the Bucks really just don't look like they're in the same tier of a team. And we'll look at the Bucks draft history. Since 2017, this is who the Milwaukee Bucks have been taking in the draft. And to me, it's the exact reason why this contender has completely fallen off over the last 3 years. Injuries have come, players have aged, but they have not replenished their depth whatsoever. So they're relying on guys like Gary Harris. And Taurean Prince has shot the ball decently, but when you're relying on all these vet minimum contracts, you're not really going to get that top-end value that some of these other contenders are kind of enjoying and benefiting. 2017, TJ Wilson with the 17th overall pick. A rotation player, or a guy who never figured into the rotation, was gone after his first deal with the team. 2018, Dante DiVincenzo again with the 17th overall pick. Early on was a huge hit. Milwaukee did let go of him too early. Where Dante in his first couple of years was figuring out as a shooter, then dealt an ankle surgery, and they were quick to trade him for a guy in Serge Ibaka who his back was shot and never gave them anything. And I think one of the biggest missteps the Bucks have ever made was being impatient with Dante as he was recovering. Because now we look at him run from his time with the Warriors to New York, and sure, he hasn't played too well just yet with the T-Wolves acclimating, but that is one of the league's best NBA, not just one of the best shooters, but one of the best 3-and-D wings you could have for someone who's a plus defender, a very good passer. And if Dante is the 6th man or 5th starter in this Bucks team, I think we'd feel a lot better about them. Then we look at 2018. That was 2018. 2019, they had the Kevin Porter Jr. pick 30th overall. They moved that. Then 2020, RJ Hampton, 24th overall pick. Jordan Nwora, 45th. Hampton was traded, I believe, on draft night. So the Bucks didn't even have a player outside Nwora in that first round of the class.
Nor looked pretty good at moments too his rookie year. He hasn't really put it together, but he had some moments, man. He had the little shaking three. If you guys remember that?
You talking about Hampton or Nwora?
No, Nora.
Nora.
He had
Hampton
some
has
moments.
no moments.
Hampton's like not good on or off the court. So
No. 2021, they take Isaiah Todd with the first pick in the second round, a player who was highly touted coming out of high school, but never really developed in the NBA, never really showcased growth. And then we go to 2022. I think this is where the Bucks really did start to showcase their front office has no idea what they're doing in the draft. Taking Marshawn Beauchamp with the 24th overall pick to me is always a head scratcher. You had guys in the second round like Andrew Nembhard. Another example would be maybe EJ Liddell, who I was high on, did not work out. But there's a couple of different players taken after him, even Peyton Watson, who I think would have been a lot more NBA ready to contribute. And Beauchamp's been, apologies, a total project who offensively hasn't really shown the growth. He was a type of player should have went to a younger team that was going to develop him and give him playing time. Milwaukee never did that. And already they've declined his fifth-year option as he struggled to really get into that rotation. Last year, 2023, they did not have their first overall pick. And that leads us to this last year, 2024. You take arguably the biggest project in the first round, AJ Johnson. This team has had the wrong process. They've had terrible results, and they missed out on a lot of quality role players who instead have went to other contenders. And I think in the process, the Bucks have lost out on the few chances they have had of rebuilding and upgrading this team around Giannis. And I think that ultimately could cost them the best player in their franchise history.
I think you guys have pointed out, I would say about 90% of the problems. Front office, been a disaster. They can't draft. They put all their chips in. And look, they won a championship in 21, so that wasn't the wrong move. But all their chips are in, and they haven't been able to draft around that. So we're seeing the effects of that. I think I'm just going to mention the elephant in the room here because this guy has been the most protected star in the NBA for the last decade.
Oh, boy.
I need to talk about Damian Lillard because Damian Lillard is everything that everybody says that Trae Young is. The small, undersized guard who doesn't defend anything. Can you win with him as the best guy? Can he play with other stars? Can he show up to big moments? Was that one conference finals a fluke? Damian Lillard made one random playoff run to the conference finals. And for him, it's, oh, great. Look, that shows who Damian Lillard is. They got swept. Who cares? But they make it to the conference finals. When Trae Young makes the conference finals, that was a fluke. He's actually a losing player. And I get it. Dame's had game winners in the playoffs. He's had two, but overall, he's been a playoff underperformer. He's barely above 40% in his career in the playoffs. He lives in his little kingdom in Portland where there's not really any expectations and there's a lot of ideas of him as an off-ball scorer. So you can put him next to a superstar. Well, man, that was his opportunity. He goes to Milwaukee, and for some reason, there seems to be attitude about going to Milwaukee instead of Miami when you're playing with Giannis, man. You're playing with the superstar, and for some reason, we're hearing complaints about that. And then he comes back here. He's still playing awful defense. The Bucks aren't making expectations. Dame isn't looking like the superstar everybody says he's been for the past couple years. And now we're going into this season, and we're having conversations about, do Giannis and Dame like each other? Like, are you kidding me? Like, this Damian Lillard is supposed to be the ultimate leader that everybody galvanizes around. So why are we having these conversations? Milwaukee has a lot more issues than just Damian Lillard and Giannis. I totally get that. But the fact that we're having these conversations and the fact that he's not backing it up on the court, while Milwaukee makes the trade to get Damian Lillard, they make a team like Boston better because they get Drew Holiday and win a title. This has been an entire disaster from the decision to bring in Damian Lillard and give up Drew Holiday to where Drew Holiday ends up. And now we're maybe seeing, like, is this who Damian Lillard is? Like a really good star who, like most of them, isn't a championship caliber player.
He said a lot. Here's the thing with Dame. Like, this pairing was supposed to be perfect. Like, this pairing was supposed to be generational. This pairing was supposed to be historic, and it's been extremely underwhelming. I like. There's been talks about how these guys seem like they don't like each other or they don't hang out with each other outside of basketball. On the court, you can see there's really it's. I don't know if it's them or Doc. Like it's too many times where I see Dame have the ball and Brook Lopez is the one setting the screen and Giannis is the one stuck in the corner. I don't like that. I genuinely don't. Why not flip them? Brook is the way better 3-point shooter. Like it isn't even close. Have Giannis set the screen. There's not much 2-man games that I've seen when I watch these guys play. It's a lot of Giannis one-on-one, Dame standing somewhere. It's a lot of Dame pick and roll with somebody else. Giannis is standing somewhere. It's not really any built-up chemistry. And I think what's getting lost in the sauce here is that you're right, Wilder, to a degree. You are right. I mean, Dame fans complained for years about how he needed another star. Can somebody come play with him in Portland? He goes to play with the big dog in Milwaukee, and it's been nothing short of a failure. Like that's what it's been. And what's missing in all this is Chris Middleton is not there, and he's kind of the guy who's been the glue to kind of this Milwaukee team that's kind of held it up together when Chris Middleton's healthy. This Milwaukee team is really good. He's been dealing with injuries over the last 2 or 3 seasons, like big, heavy ones that have kind of kept him out for extended time. That includes the playoffs. And this team is reaching that point of just, we have to, not only do we need to rebuild, we need to fire everybody in the front office, because even if we rebuild, they don't know what they're doing. So what are we rebuilding for if you don't know who to pick? We could fuck around and have the first overall pick, and we won't take Cooper Flag. We'll go ahead and take somebody.
They don't even have their pick this year.
I'm saying, like, hypothetically,
New Orleans has it.
Oh my God, they don't. And if they did, they'd pick somebody from Germany. Yeah, we like the way he just athletically looks. He's 6'11", 7'7" wingspan. Just a random. Like that's the type of vibe they give me. Like they wouldn't take Ace or Cooper. Nah, we wouldn't do that. Let's go a different route because we think of that. Like and I agree. Like taking. And I love AJ. Like I love AJ as a project. I think he's a really good player. I think he would have went if he would have went somewhere that actually lived off development, like Brooklyn. I would have loved it even more. But he went to Milwaukee, and I'm thinking, Milwaukee, why are you picking him? Like I'm so like you picked 2 guys who kind of need a good amount of development, and Tyler Smith also. Why did you pick them when you're in a position where you want to win? It just doesn't make sense. And Dame definitely doesn't. He gets just as much blame because you're not playing well at all. Like you haven't played well at all in these past 2. And of course, it's early. He can still bounce back. I'm not saying
it's early.
Yeah, but at the same time, we have last year to go off of too. You did not play well last year, So and in the playoffs, you played good in the first half when Giannis wasn't playing. But that we don't care about that. So it's a tough situation. Like and accountability needs to start being taken. Honestly.
Exactly. And I think the last part of this is we expect the Bucks defense to be bad. Like 24th in defensive rating does not surprise me because they don't have a single point of attack defender on this team. You watch Gary Trent around a ball screen, they aren't even hard screens being set. He just can't get over a single one. And that's supposed to be their wing stopper on John Moran or any elite guard in the NBA. And it's honestly a joke. I think the worst thing is that their offense is also 24th in offensive rating.
They can't make a 3.
So lifeless because, yes, they can't make a 3, and that should improve. And I also believe Chris Middleton in the 43 games that he plays this year could also add an injection, a boost into their offense. But they are a slow, very methodical team that doesn't move the ball a whole lot. A lot of these shooters are not really getting a rhythm because they're all stagnant in the half court. And then Giannis, of course, he is a great offensive player, but even then, he doesn't bring that creativity and variety, that freshness to an individual half-court look to where you're getting all these different looks and angles. It's really the same thing. And defenses can load up on him when a shooter like Gary Trent's in his own head, and he's thinking to himself, damn, I'm shooting 32% from 3 this season. Shots aren't going in. And I think things can kind of just sputter and snowball in a negative way from there. So I think the offense will get better. But the fact it's been as disappointing as it has been to be bottom 6 in the NBA, I think it's a sign that this team has a lower ceiling than we all should have expected. And ultimately, when you put so much investments in the minimum contracts and veterans on the back end of their career, Brook Lopez is someone you're counting on at 36 years old. It's just really not viable to be a contender because this Eastern Conference is filled with young teams getting better and better, and this Bucks team just looks whatever.
I had the Bucks as a 6 seed, so I'm pretty proud of that prediction. I think Milwaukee's going to start making shots. And
Mhm.
because they're top end talent, I think they're going to win more games than they're going to lose still.
They should,
Even if
yeah.
they start 1-5 after playing Cleveland tonight, I do think that that's the probability. But I want
Mhm.
to close this conversation. I want to mention one thing that I think we're going to talk about a lot more, whether that is 4 months down the road or a year down the road. If Giannis requests a trade, everything runs through New Orleans in trade negotiations. And that is because the Bucks are still recovering from the Drew Holiday deal. So a lot of those first round picks still belong to New Orleans. Like if you look at Tankathon right now, I believe it says New Orleans has the number 2 pick right now, which is the Milwaukee pick. And if you're trading Giannis Antetokounmpo, you might want your own picks to actually execute a rebuild.
Yeah.
So if a Giannis trade conversation happens, I wonder how big of a player New Orleans would be in this conversation, especially because Zion Williamson, there's frustrations with him in New Orleans with another slow start, questioning the shape he's in. Well, granted, he's been sick coming into the year, but there's been questions about that once again. I'm wondering, is it possible down the road we see some sort of Giannis and Zion swap and Milwaukee gets some of those picks back and Giannis becomes the 5 that everybody wants Zion to be, who has the defensive limitations where he can't be a 5. So I'm looking at New Orleans as a player in Giannis conversations in the future.
Can you imagine that swap? That would probably be I wouldn't say the biggest blockbuster trade in NBA history, but it would certainly be probably the most action-packed one. You're setting a top 20 player for a top 3 player. I don't remember the last time we've seen that.
I think Giannis at the 5 in New Orleans is kind of fire.
Mm-hmm.
You keep Ingram, you keep Trey Murphy.
Have Herb Jones.
Jordan
Herb
Hawkins, who
Jones.
shot the cover off the ball. A lot of
TJ
space.
McCollum is a really good 3-point shooter. That's kind of sex.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. That's kind of fire.
It's valid.
I had a mock trade yesterday from that. Let's see if I saved them. I'm an idiot sometimes, so I might have not. Okay, I did not save it, unfortunately. Wait, maybe I did. Let me see. No, I did not. I did not. I had the framework, and it really worked. Just basically, the idea is, I think it was Giannis and Brook Lopez go to New Orleans, and it was Zion, Jordan Hawkins, Evis Missy, and a couple of their own picks back going to Milwaukee. It was something of that realm. So that would be a really fun scenario because you probably have Brook Lopez as if you need a 5 sometimes, you have him in the rotation there. In Milwaukee, you're saying, we want to get a little bit younger. Maybe it's a little rich for what Milwaukee's getting back. Maybe they keep Jordan Hawkins in New Orleans, but definitely like Missy and Zion going to Milwaukee. So
I think it's a tough process because it's the same thing the Nets went through after the Harden trade, where no matter what move you make, you are being restricted by that same old team. So maybe they do business together, maybe they don't. But I think really at the end of it for the Bucks, this is kind of the sacrifice a lot of teams do end up making when you do win a championship. And you have to live with that. Because if you get a title and maybe offset 5 years where you really have to struggle and go through the mud, I think most teams would take that. Look at Toronto, right? They've dealt with that since 2020. They haven't really been on that track of being interesting or good. You still take that after the championships. I think this is oftentimes just like the ripple effect of winning a title and to each their own. I think a lot of teams will ever be in the same exact spot if they can get that ring.
If I remember that trade for Kawhi was kind of shit. What Toronto sent out. Didn't they send out like nothing really?
Mm-hmm.
I remember correctly. They got
the bar for Kawhi was the last like top.
Yeah, they sent like what was it? They got back Kawhi and Danny Green. They didn't send back too much.
No, the DeMar, the first round pick that became Keldon Johnson in 2019, and Jakob Poeltl.
That's a steal as shit.
Yeah, it
is. That's a finesse.
It was also a rental, so it's tough to really value that when you had DeMar, who would have been a Raptor.
They rented a chip. So shout out to them.
I'd rent a chip there.
I remember when that trade happened, and you know, sometimes when big trades happen, you don't really know who went in and went out outside the main pieces. I remember at that time people were wondering if a young Pascal Siakam was in that trade because it was before Siakam broke out. And I remember just waiting on my phone, like, did they deal Siakam in this deal? They had to. No way they got Kawhi. And then they get Kawhi without giving up Siakam, and people are saying, they see a star in Siakam. I'm like, are you crazy? He averaged like 7 points a game, and he's 24. No way. And in hindsight, he was a big piece on their championship team and is a really good player. So
Absolutely. He was the Robin in half of those series. So
that's true.
Respect Kyle Lowry, man.
I
Hey,
think
Kyle
it was
Lowry
a
was the
2A.
guy.
It was a 2A, 2B. Kyle
There we
Lowry's
go.
the more important player, but Pascal is better, I think.
Fred VanVleet after having a kid, though, man, that was different.
He was on a generational run. He was special.
Now let's transition to our next conversation. So I think we're seeing early in the season a lot of teams shooting a lot of threes, a lot of stars shooting a lot of threes. And there's some stuff about ratings going down ever so slightly recently, and some people speculating whether there's a correlation there. So I just want to start out by asking you guys, John, I'm starting with you on this one.
Awesome.
What's your opinion on the increase of three-point shooting, and how do you think that affects the product of the NBA?
I think it's a good thing. And honestly, I don't think it affects the product as much as many viewers would tend to believe. 3-point shooting opens the game. It obviously adds more pull to scoring. It spaces the floor to get a more one-on-one product where guys are not being double teamed, the X, Y, and Z. You just have more space for guys. I think the bigger issue for the TV product and maybe ratings going down is that there are too many fouls being called. And a regular season game, respectfully, no one wants to watch a game where maybe a team goes to the foul line 25 times and you have so many stoppages or stops throughout the duration of the game that disrupts the flow a little bit. And as a viewer, it's just every little call is being fouled. I think the biggest problem for the NBA's product is that they're not letting players be more physical. And if you're going to give offenses so much power and freedom to have, the advantages of three space and modern 3-point shooting, the defense should get something in return. And I think allowing them to get more hand fighting and really just play more aggressive, fighting over screens and tracking guys off the ball, it'll make the NBA product more engaging. Scoring will go down a little bit, and I think that's a good thing because we're at a point where scoring has kind of hit that climax where it is a little bit too much and maybe dropping somewhat, which we saw in the second half of last year. I think after that All-Star break for a little bit, refs were cracking down a little bit more. It obviously led to less stops, and in turn, the product was a little bit more engaging with scoring going down. So I don't think 3-point shooting is affecting the product. I think it should work hand in hand with more free defense and just refs holding in that whistle, not calling these fouls as often, because that to me is something as a fan, you don't want to watch the game stop 20 times throughout 2.5 hours. It's just really hard to sit through that if you're especially a more lukewarm fan opposed to someone who's diehard. Even as a diehard, it can get tired.
I think I'm kind of in the middle with it. Like, I guess it just depends on how you're doing it. Like, it depends on how you're generating these shots. Like, if you're taking, I'm gonna throw a number, 28 3-pointers and 22 of them were generated by open looks. How the fuck can I be mad?
Yeah.
But if you're taking 28 threes and like 18 of them were contested sidestep, step back threes, then it's like, dude, I don't want to see that all game.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be honest, there's no skill lacking in that skill behind that development. So I think it really depends. I've seen people complain about the Celtics, shooting a shit ton of threes, and listen, they got the guys to do it.
Yeah.
So, like, if they got the guys to do it, you follow the game plan of what your guys' best skill is. Their best guys are 3-point shooters. Derek White, Drew Holiday, Tatum's a okay 3-point shooter. Jaylen Brown's pretty solid. Porzingis, when he gets back, is good. Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Al Horford, like, these guys are shooters. Excuse me. So, I've seen people complain about Ant-Man taking a lot of threes, but we asked for him to up his 3-point shooting a couple years ago. So what are we complaining about it now for? Like, now we're upset that he's in a heat check mode and he's taking a little bit more. Like, I don't get it. Like, how like, when are we ever satisfied? So that's why I'm in the middle with it. Like, I get it. I get some games where it kind of looks like we're just looking for the three ball. It's all just dribble, kick out, dribble, kick out, dribble, kick out. We know what you're going to do. But then there's other times where not, like, they're just generating good looks. If you're generating good looks, I'll take the 30 plus threes as long as they're good looks and it's good basketball. So that's kind of where I'm at with it personally.
I got some stats to bring into this conversation. So we remember the mid to late 2010s, and the two teams that really capitalized on the increase of 3-point volume were the Houston Rockets and Golden State Warriors, right?
Yep.
The Rockets were the team, actually, compared to the Warriors, who really shot the most threes. And that's why everybody made fun of them for missing 27 in a row in the conference finals, right? So I'm just looking at the stats. So the 2017-18 Rockets led the NBA in 3-point attempts with 40.3 3-point attempts. 40.3. The year's 2024, right? So today, right now, The Boston Celtics are shooting 50 threes a game. The
Yeah.
Warriors are shooting 45 threes a game. The Charlotte Hornets are shooting 44.8 threes a game. And you keep going down, and there's 9 teams, including the Washington Wizards, who are equalizing, if not shooting more threes than the Rockets that year. And to me, there's a middle grounding. I think all of you guys brought proper points. I think the one thing I'll say that's concerning, because we're getting better at shooting threes. 9 guys, 10 guys deep can really shoot threes now in the NBA, and that wasn't the case 10 years ago. When there's going to be 12 or 13 guys on your roster, and likely all 8 of your guys in the rotation being a capable three-point shooter, analytically, why wouldn't you shoot more? So at this rate, unless there's change, why wouldn't this go up to 55 to 60 eventually for some of the top teams? And there's a point where those three-point shots are going to be a little frustrating, but then at the same time, you can say, well, if they're still shooting 55, 63s, then NBA teams are defending like idiots. Then guard the three-point line more, which theoretically, with better athletes, you're going to get more opportunities attacking the rim. Less rim protectors, meaning a guy like Anthony Edwards we mentioned. If you're putting more pressure on the three-point line, there's going to be way more wide-open slam dunk, half-court opportunities. So there's a lot of good here, but I think we have to get to this point where we don't let teams get to that 55 to 60 three-point mark.
Right.
Because once you get to that, it's going to be a hard watch. But I'm optimistic as the game continues to modernize, we're going to stop doing that. But also, like you said, if there's less fouls and more transition opportunities, effectively, I think there's a middle grounding where, the volume right now I'm okay with, but I don't think it can get way higher than where it is right now.
I think that's a fair point. And going back to what Riv said, it does come back to it being a middle ground, because 50 3-point attempts, that's largely a byproduct of the Celtics scheme and just their personnel being far better at spacing the floor than any other team. And I've heard some people, Carson on Nerd Sesh, Sona's tremendous takes, he went as far as say it's the best 3-point shooting team of all time. I don't agree with that, but I do think it can be up there for one of the best. And I think that's where you start to see teams kind of take advantage of their strengths. But again, it does come back to teams kind of finding that balance between 3-point shooting and everything else inside the arc, because I do think largely for the Celtics to be so good at that style, it can get a little bit tiring and repetitive to watch because there's not as much flow and I guess creativity to really show more variance in the ways you can score. But that's what makes the Celtics the best team in the NBA. So they're right to continue kind of making the most of that specific roster that they have. So,
but let's think 10 years from now, right? Let's think 10 years from now. How many teams, because the Celtics are really the one team in the NBA right now, maybe the Thunder, but not to the quite the same degree. Just 5 out, all guys have the right to shoot high volume threes. Are we that far away in the NBA from that just being a commonality 5-10 years down the road? And if it does reach that commonality point and we're not guarding the game differently and everybody's shooting 55 threes a game, does that get to the point where, because I think when Steph Curry really brought the game together and changed the game the way he shot, there was an appeal to his shooting. There was just a new electricity to it. But if everybody's shooting 55 threes a game, then all of a sudden that appeal is gone. And a dunk is like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's never going to be it's always going to be timeless, right? So is there going to be a point where that enchantment with 3-point shooting goes away when everybody's playing 5 out, and how can we prevent that?
Yeah, because I think even like going back to the Steph Curry point, like if you watch the way the Boston Celtics generate their 53s, and then you go back and watch the 2016 Warriors generate their threes, the Warriors just do it at such a better rate in just terms of constant ball movement, cutting, multiple ball screens, just a sense of just flashy finesse, flair. Like it's just completely different. Boston kind of is in the middle between them and the Rockets. Like the Rockets' ways of generating 3-point shots, which is much different even than Golden State ways of just generating 3-point shots. Like, so it's all about the aesthetic pleasing of it. Like people will hate the way the Boston does it because it's simple. It's the concept is I don't want to say like it's simple in the NBA. It's not too flashy. It's pretty dribble kick out. You know what they're going to do. With Houston, it was a lot of James Harden dribble penetration, kick out, Chris Paul, pick and roll, somebody be open. You got to kind of help on the dunker or the lob. You got to watch the lob because if the lob is always going to be there, it's an easy 2 points. So you send help. So then the 3-point shooters become open. So it's very just about how you implement a scheme. Even San Antonio, I don't remember if they shot a ton of threes, but the way their offense was, it was so much ball movement, screen, 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 ball movement, come around, backdoor cut, so everything is just all about how you run the system. And I think, you know, I don't think it's going to matter if the 3-point shooting continuously goes up in volume. I think it's going to matter how do teams generate the 3-point shooting. Because I think, what do we think is over the last 2 years, I think we can argue probably Sacramento probably has the most aesthetically pleasing system. If not Sacramento, probably somebody else, but they're up there. Like, I'm just using them as an example. They're up there. They were the best offensive team rating wise 2 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, but they were so fun to watch offensively. They put up a shit ton of points. Nobody ever complained about it because they were exciting to watch. The way they played offense, the way they generated points, it was efficient. It was nice. It was, finesse. It was exciting to see. So I think that's really what it is. If you're just like Tim Duncan, for example, perfect example. He's generated 20,000, 25,000 points in his career. They're probably all boring, right? But it's not about it's people who hate his game. People call it boring, but it's about how he put in. It's all about how you put it in the bucket. How you do it. That's how people, gravitate towards it. And people don't gravitate towards Tim Duncan because he didn't do it at a fun pace. He wasn't the flashiest player. He didn't do what the Joker does behind the back pass and shit. No, he was very get it. They call him Mr. Fundamental for a reason. So I think it's really just about what can your eyes manage from an entertainment standpoint.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I hate to say it, but I don't think there's really a direct solution without going into changing the rules of the game, which I think is just ridiculous. To me, I just think it comes down to giving defenses more freedom and a bone to pick. I think that's what it'll have to come down to, because anything else, it's really not going to change the blueprint. It'll only hurt the product of the game even more. So that's really what it comes down to for me.
Can we see a further 3-point line 10 years down the road to 25 feet?
I wouldn't mind that in the 4-point line way back. Fuck it, right? I wouldn't mind it.
For a full court shot beyond half being 4 points.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think if we added, people are going to take way more of them. It's just going to be oh, now they count as 4 points.
Right.
You're not drawing up a play for a 4-point shot. That's insane.
Yeah, unless you're down by 4, maybe. But
yeah, well, then if you're down by 4, you take that 3. But
yeah.
I have a question regarding shooting directly to my guys. So what do you guys think of Anthony Edwards' 3-point shooting volume so far this year?
A lot. 13 threes a game.
13 is definitely
nearly doubling what he used to be taking. So he is one of the best shooters in the NBA, and I think it's partly because it's regular season, right? A lot of these younger guards, they're going to take more threes and preserve a little bit more energy. This is someone that defends a lot. And in the playoffs, you're going to see the 3-point volume probably dwindle from 13 attempts to maybe what it was the last couple of years. It was 9, it was 8, it was 7. I think it's kind of bound to go down. I think it's really as a product of a small sample size so far.
Yeah, I think it'll probably drop to 9. I think 8 or 9 is a give or take. I think 13 is fake, Steph Curry range. That's Steph Curry. Steph Curry doesn't even take 13 at the moment. So yeah, I think Ant right now is just he's in the heat check mode is what I would call it. He's just in a mode where he's hitting them at an insane clip. He'll probably have his moment where he, maybe cools down a little bit and he'll drop down to 8 or 9 threes. Because I think his game really is that paint work. I think him getting to the rim, that's his vibe. And then once he gets to the rim, he'll start opening up for the 3-point shot more. But I think 13 right now is just a product of the small sample size. It'll probably go down a little bit. Not nothing crazy. I can see, though, him for the year, 8 to 10. That's where it'll jump around, probably 8 to 10 3-point shots.
I think there's some realness in the 3-point shooting this year. And I think the realness comes from, he's not going to shoot 13 threes a game. I don't think it's going any lower than 10.5, though. I really don't. Because the way Minnesota is running their offense, Ant's always been a great catch-and-shoot 3-point shooter. But with the way they were playing, especially with Cat and Rudy and the stagnation, the slowness that comes with it, there weren't really a lot of motion 3-point opportunities for him because they needed him to run with the ball. But you're seeing these 3-point attempts. They're different threes. They're not just off the dribble. They're off of screens. They're off the catch. They're off movement. And we heard in the Olympics him talk about the Steph Curry, the KD influence. He wants to add that. And I think that the Cat trade actually supports that more because now with Randall and Dante, you have more on-ball pressure. You're a faster team. So now there's just going to be more motion opportunities to catch it. And there's a clear mechanical change in the shot this year. It's way less motion. It's way smoother. Every year he's gotten gradually better with his shot. His rookie year, there was a lot of movement on it, and gradually every year has gotten better. This year is the first year I'm watching this, and I'm like, these mechanics are nearly perfect. They're like KD level pretty. And that's like the difference. And his confidence, his range, I'm genuinely on the camp of I think he's going to shoot 10.5 threes a game at a 39 to 40% clip, which is freaking terrifying for what he can do. Because when teams start guarding that when teams, we saw at the end of Denver yesterday, when teams start guarding him like he's an elite shooter, in clutch time, what the hell do you do about him? Because he just got to the rim for that floater to win the game. And he's added that too. That's new. Yeah. Like he added that game shot the year before. That floater's new too. Every year this guy is adding things to his game. So I'm wondering if everything channels right and he knows how to use these powers, how good is this guy now? Like, is this the best scorer in the world now if he's got this all figured out? I'm not kidding. Like, these are questions I'm wondering right now.
It is fair.
Best scorer over Luka?
If he's shooting like this from three and he knows how to gravitate that leverage when they guard him differently,
I don't know, man. Luka's
in a world where Luka doesn't exist, I'd say yes. In a world with Luka, I'd say no.
I think, but we're talking, guys, about the guy who's voted as the best athlete in the NBA right now, and you give that guy that type of jumper. Luka's a good shooter. He doesn't shoot like that. And the only star in the NBA that has comparable deceleration to Luka Doncic is Anthony Edwards. So if we're talking about a guy who can shoot from that range, get to the rim the way he does, speed up, slow down, get to the mid-range. Luka's brilliant at just knowing how to leverage that attention. That's going to be the question. If Ant can leverage that attention when they start guarding him differently, that's when stuff can get very real.
Here's the one thing on Luka, though. Luka is the best finisher at his position. He's one of, if not the best mid-range scorer. He also shoots for his career close to 40%, like 38%.
His post game is also
that was his 38% was like peak Luka though. Every other year he's like at like 34, right? So
last year 39, years before 35, 36. But I mean, he shot 76% at the rim and 53%.
Yeah,
I think if Ant gets a consistent 3-point shot, I think we're talking about him more in the SGA conversation. I don't know if we can put him in the Luka tier yet, because just Luka regular season and his playoff scoring is just like it's every level. It's ridiculous. But definitely if Ant that 3-point, we're talking about him in that next tier of scores, which is the SGA tier, like top 3 scorer in the world. I can definitely see that for sure.
I just think when you combine that athleticism, which neither of those guys have, with that jump shot, like Luka can shoot. Like what Ant's doing right now, we haven't seen since Steph to start a year. That's just a fact. So if you have those two worlds in the same body, and by the way, this isn't necessarily a new sample size. He shot 1.3 points a jump shot in the playoffs last year, shot 1.4 in the Olympics. He shot 1.3 in the preseason. Like he's been doing this for quite a long time now. And every year it looks a little tighter. I mean, I just think that and this is what I keep saying, Luka is a genius at leveraging his spots. Ant hasn't proven he can do that yet. If Anthony Edwards can do that and prove that he's also one of the best shooters in the NBA, which is effectively going to make his rim attacking that much easier, that's when I'm talking like maybe he's not averaging the same amount of points as Luka, but it might be one of those KD things where he might be the 4th leading scorer, but you can't take away a spot from him when it really, really, really matters. And a lot of Ant's shots are in the motion right now, which is what's really scary.
That's fair. By the way, we have kind of seen Dame have a 5-game stretch to start a season similar to this, where he's taking.
But Dame isn't 6'5" with a 44-inch vertical.
He's not.
What is he? 6'2" with like 38 inches? Yeah, damn. He's way smaller.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you give Dave's jump shot, like, come on, guys.
Even that Dame has 13 3-point attempts is an absurd amount.
It's going to go down, but I don't think it's going below 10. So
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So now we're going to talk about the last part, and this is unfortunately one of the sadder parts of the show. We're going to talk about Paolo Banchero out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. He's been dealing with a hip injury, and I just want to hear, do you guys think that Orlando is going to be able to hold, enough of that strong start, or is this stretch going to really fall down the standings? John, I'm going to ask you first.
So the designation for Paolo was the torn oblique, which is 4 to 6 weeks. And it was labeled as a tear, but it could be a sprain if it's only 4 to 6 weeks, because a tear would be a lot longer. If it's just 4 to 6 weeks, let's say 6, I think then that the Magic are bound to take a step back. You're losing 30 points per game, 6 assists, 9 rebounds, a player who I think is playing at the level of a bona fide all-star, a bona fide all-NBA player, a top 15 player in the sport. You cannot replace that value. Orlando's going to have good bench depth, good continuity, but I think they're bound to fall into that 6 through 8 range. Right now, they're 3-3 in the season because you really can't, in this type of offense, get back that shot creation and just natural scoring that Paolo brings that in, that out. And it's going to be a slog in the half court without him. For 6 weeks, I could see them probably being maybe 4 or 5 games under 500. Their defense will still be good, but I don't think it's going to sink their season just because it's only been listed as a month to 6 weeks. If it's anything more, that changes a lot, but they're, I guess, somewhat fortunate that it's not a longer issue where Paolo will be back by the holidays, by the new year, and that gives you still 4 months to kind of make up some ground. So it's obviously a big roadblock for the Magic, but this still is a deep team. I just think it came with the worst position, of course. You lose your best player at this position, they have the least amount of depth. So it is definitely a brutal blow. And hopefully it's just, a month long and Paul's able to get back by, let's say, the start of December, because that would be kind of pretty, I think, manageable for this Orlando team.
I think this is going to test their depth. I think for the past year or two, let's say year. For the past year, they've been known for having one of the best benches in basketball. They've been known for having a really deep bench that can, gut out wins, and they can really play at a high level. And I think, with the Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner extensions happening this offseason, this is the time to show out. Like right now, you got to hold down the fort. You got to hold down the ship. Banchero is your best player undoubtedly. But at the same time, he's out right now. You have to lock into those two guys. And Suggs, you saw a little bit when they played Cleveland, him having a lot more on-ball responsibilities. And I know we were talking about it last show about Suggs showing that. He looked a little funny in it. I won't lie. It's definitely his first game in it, so I'm not going to, look too much into it. He has to adjust. But he definitely looked a little bit uncomfortable. It looked like he was a little bit too fast for it, and he didn't have the proper decisions he needed to have, the proper decision-making. But Anthony Black has played well, this year, so that's good for them. Kentavious Pope, they still have there. They have Jonathan Isaac. They're going to have to lean on him a little bit more. Wendell Carter Jr. will be back eventually. I think Banchero being out with the way he was on the rise to kind of have an elite season, you kind of saw it a little bit early. That's what really hurts.
Right.
But I think Orlando with this team, Jamal Mosley, this is really going to test this team. I think this is a testing period more than anything. If you can survive this stretch without Banchero, that's only going to really propel this team and give them the confidence even at a higher level than what they already had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you guys are both right in a lot of ways. I have pretty solid optimism, and that goes for saying they looked horrible against Cleveland yesterday. So maybe it's not valid to have this level of optimism, but I'm still pretty hopeful that Franz Wagner in an on-ball role, I think he can carry a solid fort. I think on-ball, like Franz Wagner as the number one guy is not carrying a top half offense in the NBA, but I do think he can raise his game another level because he doesn't have to worry about his floor spacing as much. He can just create off the dribble, get to the rim, start using his feel to leverage some of that gravity and get other people involved. And they do have a good depth. You mentioned Anthony Black. I do worry about Jalen Suggs in this situation for the reasons Riv mentioned.
Yeah.
I think what Suggs really figured out himself was when he was a very high-end role player. I thought his rookie year, his sophomore year, the game was way too fast for him. He didn't have the on-ball, the handle, or the off-dribble game to really be a game manager at the point guard position. More so a really good off-ball connective guard like Nickeil Alexander-Walker on steroids. That's what he looked like last year. And I don't trust. Yep. I don't trust that he's going to really step up his game with more responsibility. I think his best role for impact is as that third guy. And I worry if you push him up to 2 or 1, that impact really drops. So that's a really big concern. But as you guys mentioned, is really test the young players. Can we see some of these other guys? I thought Tristan Da Silva showed some good moments yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. Can they get more guys like that who can really show up and just keep a 500 record over the next 15 games, however long Paolo Banchero is gone. And if they can, they're still in a solid position, I think, to be in home court, because I thought they were going to be the second best regular season team this year in the Eastern Conference, because I trusted that continuity, but I still trust them to play at that level with Paolo healthy, even though that ranking might be a little high considering this injury.
I felt like that game, he jumped up even Franz in terms of just ball handling responsibilities, running the offense. Like he went from 3-1, and I think going forward, that's kind of, I feel like, I don't know, like, one game sample size, but that's kind of going to be a thing where Suggs is going to be the number one primary creator with Franz. The jump shot, man. John, when is it ever? You told me
what happened.
36% is 36%. That's league average.
We're not asking for league average, brother.
I know, I understand. That's not bad. That's not terrible. It's not KCP shooting 18% from three. Now listen,
KCP is still more respected as a shooter than
I agree. Yes.
You don't respect him at all, though.
You told me the leap was happening. John,
What?
I'm waiting for the leap. You told me the leap was happening. That's all.
I didn't say a leap was happening. I said he would be bound to get up. I said he would be bound to kind of rebuild back to the mean average. So listen. This is where you pay Franz Wagner $220 million. It's for stretches like this. Franz needs to step up and play at a higher level because he is going to be running this entire offense. There's not many other guys. You mentioned the Silva. Jalen Suggs is taking 8 threes. He's averaging 18 points. Those guys will have to get a lot more touches, and they're going to take a lot more shots and create. And I think that won't always look pretty, but they're going to have a lot more opportunity. The responsibilities on Franz Wagner to run the offense oftentimes. As a wing player going into year 4 now, it's really going to be about how well he's able to kind of just keep their offense afloat. Can he keep them 20th in the NBA, opposed to 25th in the stretch or 28th? I think Franz just has to play a little bit better and just continue to bring that confidence. And honestly, I do believe he can bring it, because as a rookie, before Paolo came in, this was one of the most impressive players I saw in his draft class. I think it's mainly just an aggression thing. Give him more on-ball reps. He'll be a lot more sort of attacking downhill and kind of funneling things to the rest of the guys in this offense.
If Jalen Suggs is the primary creator on this team and jumps up to 1, and we're talking about Franz Wagner off the ball in this situation, that's an indictment on Franz Wagner, and that's likely an indictment on Mosley, because Jalen Suggs should never be your number one primary ball handler.
Yeah.
If you're trying to tank for Cooper Flay, great. Make him your primary ball handler. He's not that type of player. He's going to be a turnover machine in that situation, probably shooting 28%. Franz Wagner is on a max contract. Time to grow up and show up, buddy. I don't want to hear about confidence issues. I don't want to hear, I can't space the floor. I can't get to the – be the dog, man. He was a dog year 2, man. A freaking dog. And then last year, what the hell happened that Game 7 against Cleveland, man? That was disgusting.
It was
He needs to average 25 during this stretch, because he has the talent, because he is a walking paint touch, man. His ability to get to the rim, his ability to just kind of like maneuver around angles, and his balance at that side, it's ridiculous. I don't want to hear I have no confidence. Look at that freaking bank account if you want confidence, dude. Go on the court, man, and show up.
Right. Yeah. I think he's going to get 22 points. 25, I don't know. I don't think that's
25,
happening.
he can do it.
All right. I guess that's going to conclude it then.
I think that's a good way to end the show. I just started yelling at one of my favorite young players in the league. Great. So
now you got a little dog cameo.
What'd you say?
Now we got a dog cameo.
Oh, hey, Tommy, you want to go on the show? Go on the show this way. Okay, 1 second, guys. Okay.
Absolute beast.
This is Tommy, everybody.
Amazing.
And Tommy, you're going to end the show. That was episode 3 of the Objectively Biased.
Again.
This is the end of Objectively Biased episode 3. Thank you all for watching. And I think he's the new show host going forward, and I think he's relishing the moment. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.